guys, it's Mike at West End Motorsports here with our first interview episode. Our guest today is TJ, also known as Professional Monkey. He has an absolutely awesome YouTube channel. He's doing all kinds of stuff with aftermarket parts, and so it was a really nice conversation for me. I'm hoping he feels the same, but I think we had a really good conversation. We've been talking back and forth a little bit for years, and he's a really insightful guy who's doing a lot of really cool stuff out there on YouTube, and he's doing it because he loves it. And so he had just come back from Daytona, so we get his insights on what was going on in Daytona this year, and how he felt about the 2024 models, what's going on in sort of the custom culture side of stuff here, and so I thought it was really good. I'm hoping that you guys enjoy it, and let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.
All right, man. Well, it's good to have you here. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. A blast.
So, yeah, good. So you just got back from Daytona. It's March 12th, 24 here is what we got. What takeaways did you have from Daytona this year?
Well, I got back on Sunday, so I've had 48 hours to sort of recover. You can hear my voice isn't right, still 100%. But you scream at your friends over loud music for 9 days, and you end up unable to speak by the end of it. Always come home with a chest cold. Always come home with like a minor cold because you just abuse yourself for more than a week, and it catches up to you by the end of the week. So I did a video before I went where I called it Daytona Sucks. I said, but you can have fun if you just accept certain things and then, just enjoy what can be enjoyed. And I stand by that still. Daytona does suck in a lot of ways, but you get to see your friends, or at least I do, from all over the country that you only see at rallies. You have like a rally family, kind of thing. And if I didn't get to see them, 2-3 times a year, it would really bum me out because they're some of my favorite people on earth. So you spend time with them, but it still holds true that the traffic is a nightmare. Cops are overly aggressive. They weren't as bad this year as last year, my experience, but still they're hunting for things that they don't normally do so bad on a regular day-to-day basis. So when you bring, I don't know how many it is, but call it a couple 100,000 bikers into the city of Daytona, I'm sure, police motorcycles differently than they did the day before the rally started. They're looking for choppers that don't have front brakes. They're writing tickets for not having a mirror. They're doing all these things that I'm sure that the other, 51 weeks out of the year, they kind of overlook. But for that week, they're just all over you.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice opportunity to generate some revenue for the town on top of the revenue that they're generating otherwise, right?
You would think. But another thing about Daytona too is you forget that it's a fairly big city. Mm-hmm. It's not Sturgis, which has a population of like 6,000, something like that. So Sturgis is a tiny town that during the rally, a lot of people rent their houses out and sort of evacuate, except for like people who run businesses during the rally. And they're welcoming of the 250,000 people and 100,000 motorcycles because they know how much money comes into the area. A lot of businesses in Sturgis, I'm not going to quote a number, but it's a large percentage of their annual revenue, comes from the 1 week, those 10 days. So you're very welcome. And the police, for example, in Sturgis, they bring them from all the surrounding states, and they're really there to help and make sure no one gets hurt. They're not trying to harass people. They're just going like, hey, I've actually seen a Sturgis officer watch a guy stumble out of a bar toward his bike, and the cop go, sit down.
Yeah.
like don't go toward that bike. Don't do it.
Right.
So he's trying to stop him from getting a DWI, where I feel like in Daytona, they would sit with binoculars and go, we got one. He's got a red shirt. Waiting for him.
They just wait and watch. Yeah. And then they give him the Dewey, and then he loses his bike and everything else.
Yeah.
His career, his family, it all falls apart.
It's rough. I mean, the Sturgis police really get it, that form of policing. It's like, hey, people are stupid, but let's just keep them from getting killed. We don't want to put you in jail. We'll do it, but we don't want to do it.
Right.
Whereas Daytona seems a little bit predatory in the way law enforcement works. But again, this year was better than last year in that sense.
Well, maybe they figured it out too. I mean, that's one of those things where like you got to know where your bread is buttered. And like that's one of the, you go to certain party towns, you go down to Key West or something. It's like they're kind of doing the same thing where they're just steering you, because the idea is to make it so that you want to go back, exactly. Not to just pulverize people. And I think Laconia really started that a while ago. where, and I'm not sure if it's because of where it's located in the surrounding area and stuff, but I mean, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you always had this mad scramble of guys looking to get some kind of baffles or something for their exhaust because they were making the trip to Laconia, and the last year they got pinched and they got tickets and stuff like that. And so the local authorities really saw it as an opportunity to cash in that way, rather than the fact that they're actually just, if the event keeps going and it builds, they're going to cash in that way. It's kind of a short-sighted thing, at least in my mind. Where do you have to police uh our group of people? Yeah, for sure. They need policing.
Bikers need guidance.
there's no doubt about it. But I mean, it could be overkill, and then it just becomes not fun for the average people participating, and then they're just not going to come back the next year. How did you think the overall turnout was this year?
It seemed very, very busy.
Yeah.
It seemed to be absolutely packed. It was a little different because they moved some things around. So Bruce Rossmeyer, the Destination Daytona complex, Bruce Rossmeyer purchased it, I believe, right around last year or since. So there was not a change of control basically until this year's Daytona. So things changed. So they I don't want to say evicted, I can't think of a better word, but a lot of vendors that normally have a spot on the Destination Daytona complex got told that there was not a spot for them this year. So they end up having to go over to the Speedway. Now, which is strange because Destination Daytona seemed just packed. Like, it didn't seem like there was room for anything. So I'm not sure what space was given up because it seemed like it was still very full. But then you go to the Speedway and it was better for the Speedway because there was a lot more to do there than there used to be in previous years. Like previous years, you go to the Speedway and it was packed because Harley's there. Like Harley's big installation is there. And so is Indian and Suzuki and Yamaha and those terrible slingshots and stuff like that. Like they have their setup there. But there's a lot of smaller vendors there now. So it made the Speedway more fun. Yeah, so I feel like turnout was massive. Traffic was a pain. We didn't even try to go to Main Street. We didn't even attempt it because our group has been there several times, and every single person toward the end of the day, we would say like, "You want to head to Main Street?" And the entire group would just go, "Ah, like
not worth it."
No,
Seen it, done it, kind of a thing too, right? Like,
yeah. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to go to Main Street. You're going to spend a fortune bar hopping and drinking and stuff to then get on your bike and have to go back to the campground, or we can just go back to the campground now, have the libations that we already have paid for in our campers and like grill and honestly have as much if not more fun, so
right. Well, you're with your people then and you're just hanging out drinking. You don't have to worry about anything at that point, so.
And you go to the Cackleberry and you listen to one good band, the next band comes on and they're not good. So then you cross the street to the Cabbage Patch, and that band, I swear to God, it's like they set it up. Like, well, your crappy band will go on at 8, my good one will go on at 8, and then we'll switch. So everyone just went back and forth all night between the two.
Just keep pumping people back and forth. Yeah, I mean, as long as I've been doing this, I've never been, and I could tell you, I mean, this is when Daytona is really the kickoff for the riding season for us, and because we're all e-commerce and stuff, it's always, you can kind of tell, well, I think I can anyway, when Daytona is going to have a decent turnout based on kind of like my February and the hype and the way you're talking to people ahead of time. And I thought it was probably going to be a pretty good turnout year for them. It's been a pretty mild winter up north. And like, I think a lot of people make a last minute decision to go to Daytona from up north. There's people who plan around it and their lives are around Daytona and Sturgis and stuff. But there's that whole sort of bumper crop of people where they're like, weather's decent, I'm ready to go, and they'll ride down or their trailer down, obviously, but you get that might be that extra 10 or 20% where it's the difference between it being busy and like absolutely packed. And so, it sort of seemed like it based on the feedback that I've been getting and stuff like that from my side over here. So
I also feel like the pandemic, even though it feels like we're now ages out of it, there were still a lot of people financially recovering, from that period of time. And it seemed like this was the first year where people were like, okay, I can swing it now. Like there was, even though we were out of the pandemic and all that stuff, there was still last year people's, wallets were tight and this, that, and the other. And not that everyone's doing great now, but it's like they've had more time to get back on track and get back out there and go, I can swing it, so campground was absolutely overrun. The Cackleberry. I mean, they had space, but it was full, completely full. So It felt like it was 100% back. I also feel like motorcycle rallies in general are growing. It's just how many sort of events are left where there aren't many rules. Like
That's what I was going to say to you too. It's like they're growing in their not general popularity, but there's also kind of less big rallies around, where like the big ones are really the focal points. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think that there used to be a good handful of sort of regional rallies that people would go to, and some of them have just kind of gone by the wayside and whatever. But like Daytona is still Daytona, Sturgis is still Sturgis, and then you've got Laconia used to be huge. I don't know where that's at. I really don't get much.
Yeah.
I don't get much. Like I just don't. I don't get that drive that the week before when everybody should have their parts already, but everybody's instead ordering parts and trying to get them for Friday. Like that mad rush of, hey, I need this by yesterday thing before the rally. I haven't gotten that for Laconia in quite a few years. So
it's funny because I had a commenter recently say he was trying to be snarky, but he says, you guys claim to be, it wasn't just me, it was addressing a bunch of people. He says, you guys claim to be, I love the phrase real biker. You know how much I love that phrase
sure.
because one thing I've learned over the years is that there's one thing that real bikers don't do, and they don't say real biker. That's the first
it's
thing.
Like anything. Yeah. You don't need to call yourself something if you are it, generally speaking. Right. It's kind of
obvious. A lion doesn't have to tell you it's a lion.
For sure.
But they say like, if you call yourselves real bikers, why have you never been to Laconia? And I replied nicely, and I go, hey, I've actually been asked about Laconia before. I just have friends who go to Sturgis, they go to Daytona, and they go to Laconia, and every single one of them have told me they would never give up Daytona or Sturgis to go to Laconia.
Right.
And he replied, yeah, that's probably right.
So yeah, there you go. That's what we're talking about. Those top two are kind of the and maybe that's what you're seeing is just a sort of consolidation. People have less time. I don't know. Maybe I'd say the demographics might be changing, but I don't really think they are.
You see young people. It's not old. It's for the longest time I was afraid that this culture might be aging out. Or dying off, and that's true. I mean, you see a lot of older graybeards and stuff at rallies, but you see a lot of young people too. It's not. Yeah. There are a lot of young people not just at rallies but building choppers. Low price XS 650 chops and sporty chops and stuff like that. There's a lot of kids on them there. I mean, they're doing a nice job too.
Yeah, no, and the thing that they were talking about when that period of time when Harley had their last CEO, and they were just making bikes that nobody wanted, and blaming on the fact that they had to get younger, their demographics aging and stuff like that. And what I said the entire time, and this is still true. It's like the young kids are going to come because they want to, because it's cool, or because they can afford a bike. At the time they're making all the, even when they came out with the live wire, right? They're like, well, we need to get these younger kids. They're more green minded and this and that and the other thing. It's like, and they're going to buy a $25,000 motorcycle. These kids aren't making any money yet. If you made that live wire $8,000, maybe you'd get them to buy it. What are they buying? They were buying Sportsters, old Dynas, and FXRs. Why? Yeah. Because they could afford to put their stamp on it. They could afford to put their name on it. And then they'd spend a good amount of money in aftermarket parts, which is great for us, right? But and I don't care if you got a new bike or an old bike, it makes no difference to us. But, and Harley is sitting there chasing their tail. It's like, dude, make a platform bike that's inexpensive, that somebody can come in and buy. And it's not a Sportster, no offense to the Sportster guys, but, ergonomically, it's something that somebody can fit on and rides well. And you could build it out so that it does have power down the road, and you could just do all kinds of fun stuff with it. And it's just which they have actually come out with in these last few years with the new CEO. You've seen some more options like that, which I do want to talk to you in a little bit about the current lineup. And then the other thing was, it's like, do you think that the Cadillac people lay awake at night wondering if their demographics going to die out and they're going to be a brand of the past? It's like, no, man, you age into a Cadillac. You age into an Ultra Glide. You don't, it's not something that you're 21, you're out bouncing around and like, you're like, oh, I gotta get an
full dresser.
The full dresser. I need the lower cows. I need everything. That's not the way that it works. Like, you get that when you've ridden a bike that doesn't ride that well for 20 years and your back's tired and you're sick of being uncomfortable and like you're putting longer
And you have
miles
more
on and
time off, so you can actually take a long trip.
yeah,
You
right,
know, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly, dude. So comfort is a thing that you kind of work into, and that's what they're selling with their heavy hitters, with even with the baggers, like you're not going to sell a $25,000 bike to, the average young kid who's just starting off his life. It's like you're going to work his way into it, but you could sell him a $10,000 bike and you could
Yeah.
sell those all day long.
Softail standard is really good. I actually would love to
Yeah.
have a softail standard because I want to chop it up.
Yeah,
I haven't
good.
seen anyone do that yet. Like to rake it out, longer fork tubes, hardtail it. I haven't
Mhm.
seen that done yet. And the platform is so good for that. Like,
Yeah.
it just screams a 107 Milwaukee 8 with a cam in it would be a psychopath on a
On
chopper.
a light
Like
on
that.
a light bike like that, that's just
Yeah,
stripped
it'd be
down.
fun.
Well, it's good. So let's talk about the 2024 lineup, which doesn't really have any massive changes. And actually, the Softail Standard was a bike that I want to talk about for that exact reason.
Oh.
I'm tempted to kind of get one and sort of see what we could do with it.
Mhm.
Um, and because it's the thing is, there's not actually a ton of really good custom bolt-on parts out for them at the moment. I think
Mhm.
that it's like kind of waiting to be picked. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
haven't seen it
Yeah.
get a lot of attention. It's been out for what, a year or two,
It
something like
hasn't
that.
gotten cheap enough, I think.
Yeah. So I
I
just
think
looked
the used
at
ones.
Harley's MSRP because I forget. I browse these things so often, but I think it's 12, so it's 13 grand or something like that.
Mhm.
12.5 maybe,
Mhm.
which is
UH, you can get one of those for $5,000.
yeah,
That,
an older one, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
new, I mean, if you go back to the mid 2000s, like when the metric craze was enormous, because
yeah,
guys couldn't afford to buy a $13,000 Softail, it's like, well, they haven't really gone up. Now that $13,000 Softail then was a heritage, right? It had bags and stuff, and now that's 21, and you were buying maybe an $11,000 Dyna at the time. But to go from an $11,000 Dyna with a twin cam, just a regular Super Glide, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I know those guys are out there and they're customizing them and doing an awesome job, but like just for me, they're not great riding bikes. And
yeah.
those twin cams, it took a lot to get them to really go. Um, but you compare that to a 12.5 Softail with a 107 with an M8 that you could drop a cam in and add 20 horsepower and 20 foot-pounds. And
Yep.
to me,
It's a good motor. It's a really good motor. Like
yeah,
it's nice to live with. It runs cooler, doesn't vibrate as much.
yeah,
It's dead reliable if you do it right when you put the cam in it. Don't
yeah,
ask me,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I think it really is a price thing. So you look at the FXRs because they were garbage a couple of years ago
yeah,
and you could throw them away. Dyna's same things. They
right,
were affordable, so they bought them and they customized them because their customization budget is X dollars. Well, you can't
right,
start with 12 and end up with
yeah,
20. So you start with something that's five. So
right,
that $12,000 Softail standard, when you can pick them up for $3,500, $5,000 in a couple of
yeah,
years, that'll be it
yeah,
because it's the motor's
yeah.
better.
Or even sub 10. That's so you could put 3 or 4 grand into a $9,000 bike and you're still not
Mhm.
going to lose that much, or like you're saying, you get a 3,000, $5,000 bike. Yeah, absolutely. It's a no brainer.
Mhm.
But yeah, you start to put 5 grand into a 12. Now you've got a almost $20,000, $12,000 bike, and so,
Yeah.
cause you're never going to get that money back. So
Oh God, no.
you got to do that for you. And that, I mean, you've had a couple bikes now. What do you have now as far as bikes go?
I have a 1980 FLT, which is the very first year of the Tour Glide. So essentially
Yeah.
the very first road glide, a shovel head, 5-speed rubber mount.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gold, it's hideous, it's fabulous.
Yeah.
But it rides down the street like a modern bike.
But it sounds
I
awesome too,
have
man. There's few things in the world that sound like an old shovel.
it's an amazing bike. I
Yeah,
have
perfect.
a 1990 Sportster motor with a Buell top end that's been dropped into a Paco frame with a 14 over front end, so a rigid chop.
Mm,
Her name was Brown Sugar. I built that last year. Actually, that was done just in time for Daytona last year.
okay.
That one is being sold or going to go on because I need the space because I'm building a new chopper right now, which is a 1990s big twin S&S Evo. It's actually a 98-inch Super Stroker that I'm dropping into a Pawco rigid but stock rake. I'm going to do a 6 over Springer front end, all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to build an evil rigid chopper for. It'll be finished by Sturgis, but it's actually being built for Smokeout. I'm an invited builder for Smokeout this year.
Okay.
So it'll be judged there. It'll lose, but it's going to be cool. I've
They're
got
competing.
a 2019 CVO Road Glide. That's my everyday dresser. My wife has a 2022 Road Glide Special that we've all fully customized. That's her everyday dresser. I have a 2014 Heritage Vicla that's actually sold. The shipper's picking it up in a couple weeks, but it's still in my garage. And and a 2008 Softail Crossbones. That's my wife's bar hopper. We're a
Yeah.
little bike obsessed. I'm sure I'm forgetting something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's quite a bit there. So what do you think of the current? I mean, it's been, I guess, the last year or so. The current CVOs and CVO ST models.
You know, they're styling away from my preference, but they're styling in a way that's right for the market. I mean, that's Harley Davidson is a business, so somewhere along the line, some brilliant strategists out there have said we need to lean into the performance bagger scene. Um, and actually, we'll talk about this in a minute, but there was a lot of developments on that during Daytona where the performance bagger purists are losing their minds. They're so fed up and angry. There were all these negative posts on Instagram, and a good friend of mine who has it's like 200 horsepower, this Road Glide he's built. He's not a builder himself, but he takes it to his favorite shop to have this done, and then this, and then this, and then that, so he sort of acted as general contractor of sorts on this crazy build. And he and all his friends have hopped up, street glides and road glides. The bikes that they own are sort of the bikes that Harley have tried to create with the new CVOs, which is kind of funny because they're all about suspension. You still put suspension on a CVO, like I don't know, rather than either here nor there. But the new CVO ST, the forged carbon fiber front fender and the Screaming Eagle graphics, which is cool, all that sort of stuff. I get it. It's just not for me. When I bought a CVO, it was because it was over the top chrome, and it was actually had the #1 tank Evel Knievel look striping on it, and that's my 19 CVO. And it was chrome legs and a 21-inch front wheel, not over the size, 21-inch, chrome and black, and it was just nicely done. Like it was a
Custom and
nicely
clean.
done custom from the factory, and then I tore the damn thing apart, and it doesn't look anything like it did when I first got it. But still, like, it started as an amazing, beautiful, showy bike, and you look at these new CVO STs, and there's a lot of interesting tech there and engineering, but it's not pretty. That's, that's the way I look at it.
I'm glad you said that, because that's almost exactly the way that I feel about it too. Like I've never been the biggest CVO guy, and I'm sure I'm not their target audience, and probably never have been. But it did seem to me that, just from a branding perspective, the CVO brand was pretty obvious, and it's exactly what you just said, which is that it is the showier, dressed up, and also, like, they would always experiment with performance stuff on the CVO,
yeah, a little bit,
right?
yeah,
Always. But at the end of the day, it was the bike that was in the showroom where you looked at it, or it caught your eye, and you were like, that's a different bike. That's not a road glide. That's not a street glide. That's the CVO. It was obvious. And the current CVOs they don't seem like that. Maybe they should have just kept the STs and made that CVO ST like just that ST line. Like, I kind of thought that was cool when they broke out those STs, whether it was last year or the year before, I don't remember. It's like, okay, yeah, give us a bare bones performance machine, factory performance machine. That's cool. I don't care if it's Ford or Chevy or Harley that does that.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, give me the good stuff, and then keep the dressier stuff for the CVO. But then
It's funny because the CVO used to be the rich guy's bike too, right?
Yeah.
The rich person would walk in and they could write, well, I'll write 50 grand check, walk out, because it's already done. Because I'm generalizing here, but a lot of CVO owners are not exactly the type to wrench on their bike. So they go and they're like, well, that one's done, and I just do it. I don't have to decide what's cool. I've been told what's cool. The ST,
and they do it every 2 years or every year. Like, a lot of those CVO guys just get the new CVO as a pissing match.
I know it's cool, so I'll buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
The CVO ST really illustrates what was causing the performance bagger people to lose their minds. And they didn't say the specific terms, but it's kind of what it is. They said that the big wheel bagger guys are now just going to a big wheel bagger builder and saying, build me a performance bagger. And so the same guys who
I
wore
can see that.
Affliction jeans a couple of years ago and had bejeweled freaking pockets and all the bullshit on the 39-inch wheel and couldn't turn. And they were hilarious to watch them ride through a parking lot. Big wheel baggers still exist. So
Oh
you
yeah.
see them there at Daytona and you just laugh because the guy can't ride it. Like they can't go anywhere with it. Anyway, that same dude who has that same money is going to the same builder that used to do the big wheel baggers and saying, make me a performance bagger. So now they're
'Cause it's
showing up
hot.
at shows with $15,000 paint jobs and $40,000 motors. And all the guys that are performance bagger obsessed are just incensed and pissed off and like, we're done with it. I saw one post on Instagram that buddy of mine shared saying, that's it. Don't go to any more shows. Don't go to anything else. Just get on your bikes and just go for rides together and screw this thing. And I was like, and I told him when we were talking about it later, I said, that happens to every Harley based motorcycle subculture eventually. When you do something cool, the well-moneyed who have no real emotion about it just steal it.
It's anything. I mean, like it's music. It's the style kind of bubbles up from the bottom, and then the corporate, bean counters glom onto it and try to make it cool. And at the end of the day, they always miss the exact same thing, which is that's not really their job, and that's what makes it uncool. You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of like I thought what Harley did with the Lowrider ST was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But they also didn't overdo it. Like they kind of saw what the market was doing with FXRs and the FXR tour models and stuff. And they were like, you know what, maybe we should have something like that. I still think that they're missing out on an enormous opportunity to make like a mini street glide on that Softail platform that has real hard bags and a stereo built into the fairing and whatever. But nonetheless, I thought that the Lowrider ST is actually kind of neat. It's
cool.
Sort of a nod to past stuff with new stuff. But what they didn't do with that was exactly what you're talking about, which is just like, hey, tell me what everybody thinks is cool and let's go do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what that
craze is going to be. I think choppers. I mean, think about what choppers were ruined by the 2000s chopper craze, right? Like
terrible.
Choppers were Billy Lane and West Coast choppers, Jesse James and all those dudes and Matt Hatch, whatever, and Chica and all those guys that were badass builders. Yeah. And then a bunch of money was thrown at it. Nothing wrong with those guys. They were just doing, all right, I guess now I'm doing it with a much bigger budget. The customers suddenly had X amount of money. Now all of a sudden they had, what we would spend on a house to spend on a bike. And those guys were like, all right, so I'll build to that price. And then it just went out of control. And again, the Affliction Jeans owner showed up on a monstrosity that my friends who build inexpensive sporty chops call Easter egg choppers. These things are just stupid looking, whatever. And then it got so big, you had OEMs. You had Big Dog and Texas Iron Horse and all these things that were born as a result of this little sub industry, and then it died. I think that choppers are going to come back again, and I've seen it the last couple of rallies where chop shows are getting bigger. And
that's what I wanted to actually ask you is what's going on with the chop. Honestly, dude, I'm not an Instagram guy, and I mean, you could make the case that I should be doing what we do here, but I'm just not really a social media guy in general. So, I'll just follow whatever anybody asks me about. You know what I mean? So if you call and you say, "Hey, I want these handlebars," and I'll look into it and we'll see it. You know what I mean? So I'm just kind of open to carrying whatever people ask for. But it does seem like the sort of chopper subculture is and has been sort of picking up. It's just when was the last time? And it might be this last Daytona trip. When was the last time you saw a custom bike that you were completely stunned by that you've never seen before?
This last Daytona. Yeah. And the cool thing was it was a kid. So my buddy Bill, who's built choppers forever and makes everything. He makes his oil tank, he makes his gas tank, he makes his frame. He the motor better have a title, otherwise he ain't gonna be able to put it on the road. Right. That kind of thing. And he has a divorced iron head. So the iron head Sportster motor is one piece. He actually cut the transmission off, got a shovel head transmission, machined the lower end of the motor to where it looks like it never had a transmission on it, and made this amazing chopper called the Time Machine. I love that bike, but I've seen it a lot. We're at last probably 18 months he's had it. And we were at a show and Bill walks up and says, "You got to see this thing." And we go around the corner and there is a bike that the lower cradle of the frame was left and the neck from an FXR.
Okay.
So that was black. The top half of the frame was handmade out of stainless steel, welded together. Didn't look like an FXR anymore, but you could tell that's kind of where it was born. Paint was incredible. Wheels were incredible. Lighting, all that stuff. And it was all little tiny shops. Every piece, either he made it or it was from a parts maker that's very not very well known. And he just created the most gorgeous bike. And Bill was like, here I am doing this forever and thinking I know what it is. And a goddamn kid pulls in here and just blows me out of the water. Like, and that bike, everyone was talking about that bike all week.
Well, that's what it takes. I mean, that's awesome. Cause like, again, I mean, I'm not out looking for that kind of stuff either. I mean, if it comes across, it comes across. It's just when I see what the industry itself produces, it's generally pretty unimpressive, but that's what you need. You need somebody out there with, like you said, it's a kid. In a way, he doesn't know any better, which is exactly what you need to do.
He's not stuck in a mold.
Right. Exactly.
I know what I think a chopper should look like and what I like about it.
Yeah.
And he threw all that out the window, like I think he had front brakes, which in my background, that's a no. Even though I run front brakes on the chopper I built last year, you run a spool wheel. You don't have brakes.
Yeah.
You don't have suspension. It's a rigid, and you don't have, this sort of stuff. And you have to have a tall sissy bar. And you have to there's this recipe you have to follow that I still think is the best looking bikes. But he threw all that out the window and showed up with something that was absolutely incredible. But I think that if you see all these young people, they want to make something out of small shop parts. It's sort of it's a little hipster driven, maybe. The
handmade craftsmanship kind of thing.
Yeah,
but that's also kind of timeless too. It's just because everything we deal with all the time is factory, cookie cutter. I mean, every house that you see in every new development, I mean, all around us everywhere is just cookie cutter bullshit,
common. But these shops like FNA Customs and what was the one, Death Machine Cycles or whatever, like making helmets that didn't look stupid. Like they would take the smaller shell and make a better, smaller inside so you could wear a helmet that didn't look like Marvin the Martian going on the road. Like little stuff like that. That was just really cool. And FNA makes amazing stuff like really cool LED 60 style headlights. And then they make this little like chrome rocket looking thing that you put in the oil port of your old Evo or shovel. And if you have adequate pressure, the tip of the rocket sticks up. If you don't, that it's like, if it's not up, you don't have enough oil pressure. Like that, just like really neat stuff you just don't see at a Harley dealership, or something like that. So
no, that's really cool. What'd you say that was? FNA?
FNA Customs.
Okay.
Literally the letter F, letter N, letter A. Really, really neat stuff.
FNA.
Very cool.
Oh, I get it now. I'm a little slow on the uptake. It took me a minute. Well, that's good, man. No, that's basically, what you hope for. I think that we're probably due. I feel like we're due for that kind of revival. Like we've been probably overdue for something like that. And Harley is going to accidentally again make a ton of money, which is the way that it's the only way that they ever really do really well, is sort of by accident. Like these things just catch on. And it's not because they're moving the needle. It's because, again, it's happening underneath them, and so like all of a sudden you're going to get these kids who are like sick and tired of everything being being told what to do. You know what I mean? And it's just that age where they're just gonna be like, nah, I'm getting a motorcycle. Like first of all, it's got to be dangerous, and when it gets to where everybody's dads and their dad's friends on the weekends and stuff, and they're all lawyers and doctors, and no offense to lawyers and doctors, we need them. But like when that's their circle and the kid sees that, they don't think that's cool when their parents are doing it. You know what I mean? So it's got to get to that point where it's sort of an act of rebellion again. And I think we're sort of at that point, in a lot of different places. So that's pretty exciting. Was there any of the other the 24 models is there anything about the 24 models that stands out to you?
I really like the new Breakout. I think the Breakout's pretty slick. I think putting some tall ape hangers on it, you got a cool bike already. Some pipes and ape hangers, and you're golden. What I really liked when I was there was I do feel like, not to change directions back at it, but
oh no, you're fine.
Harley does seem to be listening more in the last 12 months than they did previously, right? So at Daytona this year, they sponsored Willie's Tropical Tattoo Chopper Time.
Okay.
Like the mother of all chopper shows in Daytona is Willie's
Yeah.
Tropical Tattoo. There's a lot of really good ones, but that's the one that everyone knows. Harley sponsored it. There were Harley banners in the building. They're listening, and the bike they debuted during Daytona was the Hydroglide, the Hydroglide Revival.
Yeah.
And we went to a luncheon thing on Monday. Me and Bill did that. They had the bike there, and Karen Davidson was there, and their designers were there, and they talked a long time about where these things come from, and it's design language. It goes right over my head. But the Hydroglide Revival is a heritage with throwback paint, sort of glass beaded bags, some nice little touches here and there, a red windshield, white walls. That's the fringe and this and the other, which I'm not a fringe fan, but it's a very nicely done throwback to I think it's what panhead, 49, 59?
Yeah, it's 49 or 50 panhead.
49 panhead,
51, right? Something like that.
So they really really did a nice job with that bike, and I really liked it. So I was like looking at that going, see, and I think where they're listening is they know the guy that's going to buy it isn't the one they built it for. I feel like if you go to these shows, it's people of all ages, but a lot of young people that would kill for a shovel head. They would kill for a shovel head FLH or a panhead or something like that. And Harley's, of course, not going to build a $28,000 Highway King for a kid, but the kid wants it. Right. They're not going to be the one that can buy it. So I think they're figuring that out. And one of the designers said, you're going to see us lean into our heritage more in the future. Like they're starting to realize, like you said, they tried it. The Revival's a great product. I mean, not the Revival. The Livewire is a great product. It's a very well-made electric motorcycle. Sure. The Pan Am, all my ADV buddies are like, that's a fantastic ADV bike. They need a smaller one. They need a lighter weight one. But that's a fantastic ADV bike, and they should keep making those. But the rest of the line, they need to embrace that they're the king of cool and custom and all that sort of stuff.
I've been saying it for years. It's like Harley had, and this isn't the current CEO. I think that he sort of realizes, but this is the previous one. Harley had and has, but especially had the probably best branding in corporate anything. You knew exactly what a Harley Davidson was. Okay. You didn't have to be into motorcycles. Are they selling as many motorcycles as Ford sells cars? No, they're not. You know what I mean? But that's not the point. Like Harley Davidson brand meant a thing that you can go to anybody on the street and they knew exactly what it was, man. It's a little bit edgy. You know what I mean? Like we all know what it is.
Hear it. Everyone knows the sound. Everyone knows the sound.
It's the sound and everything that goes along with it. We all know what it is. It's like such and Polaris, right? When they came out with Victory, would have paid any amount of money to get that branding. That's why they bought Indian, right? So like they bought Indian because Indian was an established brand. I'm not saying that it's where Harley was, right? But like it is an established brand. It has that sort of history and pedigree. But like Harley had that. And then they wanted somewhere somebody who made a ton of money decided that they wanted to be Honda and they wanted to come out. And I'm not shitting on a V-Rod, okay? Because there's, it's a good performing bike, but like they decided instead of just focusing on doing what we do best and being the best at it and making Honda chase us and making these other companies chase us, let's dip into their market. You know what I mean? Let's make an overhead cam motor that circulates the oil through the frame, or let's make an adventure bike, or let's make a Buell, or let's go on and on and on, or let's make a Livewire. I mean, I could probably give you 20 examples off the top of my head if I really tried of things that someone at Harley Davidson corporate should have said, hey guys, this is a really cool concept. Let's design it and sell it to somebody else. I don't know. We know what, do whatever you want to do, but this isn't something we should be putting our brand name on because this is going to take away from our brand name. When our people that are ready to spend $50,000 on a motorcycle walk into the dealership and this is what they see, you take away from that brand, which is the best thing that they ever had going for them, right? Like even when they got bought out from the AMF years, even after 10 or 15 years of sort of brand destruction in a lot of ways, which is what you saw for a period of time not so long ago, they still had enough to carry on. And what did they do? They went back to their roots, essentially, right? Like they went back to making real Harleys. Now we're not talking about real bikers, but
Yeah, right.
they went
No,
back.
but I get it. You're right. Yeah, I mean, the Hydroglide is going to be a huge hit. The Highway
Yeah,
King.
it's cool.
I love the Highway King. I poked fun at the revival. Wasn't it called the revival? The Street Glide that came out, because I was never a fan of the white. But then again, that's the accurate motorcycle. Like
Right.
back in the day, would have had a white fiberglass bags and a white fiberglass fairing on it. I have a buddy who has a 71 that it looks just like that bike. It's just his is dark red. And I've come around to it, but still, I don't know. I love the Highway King. I love those bikes. I love they're leaning into the history. I wish they could make a Springer revival, but they can't. It's just not. You can't make a Springer as a new manufacturer and put it on the road these days.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a Springer too, man. So I'm
you
right.
can't put
I'm right
ABS
there
in a
with you.
Springer; it doesn't work. So it's but it'll be interesting to see them do some cool stuff. I would love to own every failed Harley that was a good idea.
Yeah, you need a big garage.
I need a bigger garage, but I would love to have a rocker.
Yeah, that's one of them. That was on the top of my head. The
It
FX
failed, but it's a pretty. You see them today, and you're like, they're kind of cool.
they're kind of neat.
You know?
But it's like also maybe something that should have stayed on the drawing board. You know what I mean? Like it's like a concept bike. It's or like a concept car. Like
it was too late. That's all it was. If they would have come out with that sucker in 2001 or something like that,
yeah,
you wouldn't. But the
Pro Streets.
Discovery Channel phase was dying by the time it came out. It was 2008 or 9, and that's too late.
I think it was 09, and they made it different enough where you really couldn't do anything to it.
No,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was so limited.
Deuce is another bike that you can't do anything to a Deuce. Everything's different.
Deuce was the same. Now, I mean, Deuce lasted a while, and they were popular. I think that was I wouldn't call that like a market failure, but it was a pain in the butt to do stuff too. But that FX, what was that? The FX, was it FXDR that they came out?
Oh
with?
yeah, I liked that one. That performance looked like a drag bike. I like that one.
I called it the rocker too, because it had so many similarities, and it's like, all right, it looks cool, but are you going to move this? No, they did. It's gone. They're still making
CVO Springer that was not really a Springer. It had like the rocker oil tank, and that it was like this hodgepodge of parts put together. Very cool bike. Can't do a damn thing to it because nothing fits.
No, exactly.
That's years ago.
Yeah, I mean the new Sportsters. I don't know. You see any of them around? You see any of them at the rallies?
The Sportster S?
Yeah.
I don't think I saw a single one. Daytona. I mean, like, I don't think I saw one at Daytona this year. If there was, I mean, it may have been hidden there, but I didn't notice it.
I saw some pipes for.
I think I saw some of those. The little Nightster, I saw some of them.
Yeah, we do see, and that's the other thing that they never did. That's right in front of them. It's like make an entry level motorcycle that's not a Honda. Make a Harley entry level. Like all those years they sold that Sportster because everybody thought it was a Harley that was small, but then you rode it and you're like, well, the seat height's way too high. It's way too narrow. Yes, you can customize a Sportster all day long and they're a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying for the average guy that wants to get into, the average weekend warrior type guy that wants to get into riding a Harley, or lady, especially, right? If you want to expand your demographics, so many of them went to the metric bikes because the metric bikes made a solid bike that you could sit on. It wasn't high. It was big enough where you could put some saddlebags on it, or maybe it came with saddlebags and it didn't cost you a ton of money. And you knew you were going to get rid of it, or maybe not. Maybe you'd keep it. But like Harley just never reinvested in the Sportster in a way that I thought made any sense. You could come out with a smaller engine bike that's lightweight, low to the ground, but still is a Harley. And that's not a street 750. You know what I mean? Yeah, you remember those? So there's two more.
Yeah, there's another one. And I'd rather have a 500 just to make it more ridiculous.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I put knobby tires on it and ride around campgrounds. That's what I tell my wife all the time.
Make it a pit bike. Sure, that's fine.
I want a 500cc pit bike.
But yeah, that wasn't what I just described. And if they had done that with the Sportster, I mean, especially in the mid 2000s to like the teens, man. I mean, the Kawasaki Vulcan 900, which they sold a truckload of.
The Mean Street, the Yamaha Warrior. Boy, Yamaha gave them a gift by shutting down the Starline.
Yeah.
Was it last year or year before?
Yeah. Because Yamaha they did so well. I got one. That was my first bike, man. V-Star 1100.
I had a Warrior I had a lot of buddies who rode Royal Star Ventures if they couldn't afford a Road King.
Yeah.
You had the regular V Star. You had what was the bigger one? The Road
Roadstar. So there's
Roadstar. Yeah,
Roadstar
those were
16 or 1700, and then the Royal Star was a 4-cylinder. It wasn't a
yeah.
V twin.
But I had a Warrior. I had a Roadstar Warrior that I loved.
Yeah.
And I think that if you couldn't afford a Harley, to me, Yamaha was the obvious choice. Like you went straight to a Star because they were by far the coolest and the most customized metric bikes out there. I loved my Warrior. I'd love to have another one. I don't care.
Well, they were all
Yamaha,
air cooled.
Cool bike.
They single pin cranks. They sounded good. I mean, I still have. So my first bike was a V Star 1100. I think I was 18 when I bought it. We had just started. My dad had just started the business and stuff. And out of all those chopper guys, the guys that I still think did the most, the thing that appealed to me the most was Exile out in California. Russell Russell Mitchell, I think was his name.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think he's still around. But God, I just love
flat black, everything basic, everything hidden. You couldn't see a single wire.
Exactly. Yeah. So clean and crisp. It was like everything was just distilled down to the motorcycle. You know what I mean? And so I didn't have enough money for anything remotely close to that. I didn't have enough money for a lowrider, So, so I bought a V-Star 1100. I bought it new, but they had like a black edition, so a lot of it was already black. It was a V-Star custom, and then I did all that stuff, man. I put ape hangers on it. We took the dash off the thing, made a totally custom subframe fender combination. And I mean, if you look at it, like it's a good it's an imitation for sure, but it's a good imitation. But you know what? That's the thing. That's like that kid that you're talking about that's 21. Like, that's what you do, and like that's what you do when you're into all this custom stuff that's going on around it, So
I was trying to remember. I was in my late 20s when I bought that Warrior, so I wanted a Harley. My dad had a Harley, but I wanted to go fast.
Yeah,
and
they moved. Those Warriors were bikes that moved. It was
obvious. Like I changed. I put drag bars on it. I took off the license plate and put it on a swing arm. Move the license plate around, shaved off the rear turn signals, put the blacked out taillight, that sort of stuff. But I still had R1 wheels and inspired wheels and forks, really good brakes. And it was 102-inch when Harley was still, oh God, what would that have been? Still would have been.
Harley would have been a
96,
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And it would just whip everything.
Fuel injected, right? The Warriors were fuel injected, weren't they?
Fuel injected. Well, and this was until 2004. So yeah, it would have been 88s or 96s. Yeah. And my dad had buddies with heavily modified Harleys that we would be racing, and I didn't know we were racing. Like, that's how fast. Like they were in it. They were all the way in it, and I was just riding, like not knowing that. Oh, we're racing. I didn't know that. Like
What pipes did you have on that thing?
I think at the time there was really only one option, and I think it was Cobra or something like that.
Maybe. Bub's not around anymore, but Bub made a pipe for those things, the big Willies. And maybe they made the jug huggers too. Dude, those things sounded outrageous.
It was loud. It was stupid loud. These were, I remember they were short shots. They only came out and then lobbed off straight. I think they were Cobra because I can picture their like sort of short shot pipe that they still make today for Sportsters, and that's kind of what it looked like.
Yeah, it could have been. I don't remember what Cobra had for options then. Could have been the jug hugger. I mean, that's a company that I wish was still around that just isn't anymore. But I mean, they for a period of time, man, they made the best sounding pipes on absolute. I mean, they were the guys who made those first Reinhardts and stuff. Those 3.5-inch Reinhardts that everybody had that had the purple tips. They would turn purple and stuff. But yeah, dude, those sounded so good. And then I don't know exactly what happened to them, but those pipes on the Warrior sounded absolutely awesome. So I got one more question for you. I don't know if you got a hard out here, but I got one quick one. Well, maybe it's not a quick one. I'm wondering if you can tell me any sort of disastrous mistakes that you've made throughout the process of owning all the different bikes that you've had, in the process of customizing these things. Can you tell me one gigantic mistake that you made?
Oh my God.
The biggest.
So many. So Roadside Marty, you have to beat me on this. Roadside Marty, who's very well-known personality in the custom bike world, hands out stickers at rallies that say "I effed up a lot." It's not F. I don't know if it's PG or not.
I could use one.
It's a little sticker, and it says
on my mirror in the morning.
It says "I effed up a lot," but it doesn't say effed. And it says Roadside Marty on. I actually put it on the rear of my brown sugar chopper, like on the bike. because there were so many little things. And I so lucky though that none of them were disasters. Like
Right.
all of them could be fixed. So many little things, especially in custom bikes. Things are not made to fit. You have to make them fit. It's not a Lego kit, you know. I just ordered because the price was so good during Christmas, a roller kit from Paco called the Dirty Biker, and then had it modified from Paco. Like they changed the frame for me, a couple little things here and there. So it's not a Dirty Biker anymore, but ordered it from them. Anyway, still when it arrived, I was telling my friends, a couple of my friends were like, "Oh, but you used a roller kit?" And then I go, "That doesn't mean what you think it means."
Right.
A roller is just a discounted collection of parts. It's not like a truck opens and they roll a motorcycle out. You know, like it came on a pallet.
Right.
You know, the tires weren't on the wheels. The fender doesn't have holes. The rear fender.
Yeah.
So I mean, like you're still making everything work. It's not. It just means you're getting a better price.
And it's a platform. It's a jumping off point. Is really what it is.
I really just wanted the Springer forks and the frame, but they had it discounted so much. All the other stuff was practically free, and it turns out I'm going to end up using a lot of it. But none of that's going to be easy. Nothing's going to go together simply. When I decided I want to put a fork brace on the brown sugar chopper for safety. When it was the first chopper I ever built, I wanted a front brake. I went with a 19-inch front wheel to make it look A, more old school, and B, handle a little better, more tire. And I wanted to run a fork brace so you don't have that flop down the road. Because again, I have a 14 over front end. It's a long chop. Well, I get all the stuff. I put this thing together. I put the fork brakes on, and it's touching the tire. Like it's actually like sitting on the tire. I'm like, well,
yeah, that's a problem.
That's not going to work. So I had to make brackets to lift the fork brace up to get it off the tire. That's just one example. Wiring. I wired the whole bike up because when you build a chopper, there's no kit. You know what I mean? Like you're starting from scratch. I wired the whole thing up, and every time I would hit the brake and the brake light would come on, it would blow the main fuse. And it took me days to figure out that during assembly, I had to trace every wire. A wire had gotten pinched under the rear fender, and it was grounding out on the fender and popping so you had to find that. On my new stuff, I have a 2023 Road Glide ST. I forgot to mention that. And I did my own.
Yeah, no big deal. I forgot to mention.
Well, it's not really mine. Advan Black, it's in my name, but they bought it for me to put carbon fiber parts on and build it up.
Yeah.
I put my own cam chest in it. I put a Screaming Eagle cam plate and pump and a Zippers 472 redshift cam in it myself. And I'd never done that before. I've done stuff that hard before, so I was like, I can do it. And when I put the cam chest back together, I didn't put the timing marks together. And then it wouldn't start, and I don't know why. And I had to call my buddy Jason, who is a vintage builder, and he came over, and he's like, I don't know what it is. Nothing's banging, nothing's bad. It just won't fire. And he takes the spark plugs out, and he's looking down the cylinders, and he goes, so turn it to top dead center. And I did, and he goes, well, why is the piston up? Like what the hell is going on? And he's like screaming at the bike, going, you don't make any sense. What are you? And all of a sudden he stops and looks at me and goes, you matched up the timing marks, didn't you? When you put it back together. And I went, I didn't. And I was just lucky that I had a 180 reversed so that nothing was going to come in contact, because they will smack.
You can cause damage, man. Well, that could have been it. That could have been your most.
That could have been. I sometimes, I swear to God, my grandfather, who's been many years gone, was an engineer on the gas pipeline in southern Missouri, northern Arkansas. He could build or fix anything. Like he just the smartest guy ever. And I spent summers at his house and stuff. I swear to God, he's standing in the garage sometime, like a garden.
Shaking his head.
I can hear his voice going, "What the hell are you doing, boy?" Like yelling at me. And there's other times where I swear to God, he's like, well, at least turn them to where they're so far off and nothing's going to break. Like he's my guardian angel in the garage, I feel. So. Yeah.
Well, you got away with one there, man. That's good. I think that's a sweet place to stop, unless you got anything else you wanted to talk about.
No, that's good.
Well, listen, man, I appreciate you taking the time out. Hopefully this is something we could do again. And we're trying to get this thing pumping here. I got a couple other cool guests coming up, and so I just wanted to say thank you for doing this, and hopefully somebody gets something out of it.
Right on. Appreciate it. Good luck.
All right, man. Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.